Good morning. I love that part. Dun, 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 dun. I was once a very angry person. I took pride in my guitar tone. You have this big, in the 80s, you had the big full stacks, behind you, the Marshall stacks, with big 412 cabinets and 100-watt head. And you're just like, oh, I'm making everybody deaf. Now everything's in a box and you just plug directly to the PA. I was watching Nita Strauss this morning on something that popped up in my feed, and she's promoting this pedal, and so it was pretty neat. So no, I did not. I have an issue that I have to address before I can do anything. I for the first night in a long, long time, I had to sleep without my CPAP machine, and the power supply I think went bad. So I will be dealing with that once it's business hours. So this won't be a very long live feed. I try to end this at 8 o'clock. So, but let's do the shout outs. We got Big Houston. We got Cascade, who was not first because Big Houston was actually first. Desert Okie Pam, what's up? Ratman Roden, hey Gramps. Jeremy Rice. Speaking of Gramps, speaking of being old, Ratman's retirement is running his own truck, slinging chains and slinging straps. He does not complain about his age. You gotta love that, right? Jeremy, what's up? Let's see, Jerome. Good morning, CDN. Good morning. I've not checked my email yet to see if you've sent me anything. John Armstrong. Good morning. Hope you are well. One of my trucks had to stay all night at the shipper, so detention time. So that's kind of, and it won't affect the load delivery, I don't think. We'll see. Anyways, good morning, guys. My CPAP machine. I was an hour into my rest, and all of a sudden I wake up, barely being able to breathe, and I look, and the machine is dead. So at first I thought it was the power strip that I just bought, and then so I just plugged it into the different things, the power supply. It looks like the same thing you'd buy for your laptop. It looks like one of those, and Amazon's got them for $20, but it wouldn't be here till Saturday. Now the wife did mention that I was not anywhere near of what the Snorelord was. But I have to show compliance, right? I still have my CDL. I still drive a truck on occasion. So I still got to show compliance. So I can't dilly-dally on that. And to be honest with you guys, I don't know how to sleep without it at this point. It's become so ingrained in my routine. How does someone get off CPAP machine? I know nothing about them. Well, so there's criteria that the physical, if your BMI is over a certain number, if your neck's a certain circumference, I think there's 4 questions that you got to answer, and if you answer yes or you have any of these specs, then you have to either prove that you don't have sleep apnea, and you got to take a test, or you got to show compliance on your CPAP machine if you're on it. It's kind of funny, I come in to my DOT physicals with the piece of paper that shows my compliance from, it's a printout that I get directly from ResMed, and the lady is still measuring my neck. I'm like, what are you measuring my neck for? I told you I had sleep apnea. Here's compliance. Why the hell are you measuring my neck for? A lot of people have asked me if with the weight loss, if I can get off the machine, and I think I need to go down another 40 to 60 pounds before I can like comfortably put that plan in motion, because my sleep apnea is not based on my weight. Did weight make it worse? Yes, but it's not based around my weight. It's based around my throat structure. So in order to do that, though, I would have to, number one, get my BMI down. Number two, make sure my neck circumference isn't going to be measured, like it's not above, I don't even know what the specs are. And then, and I would have to get another sleep study to prove that I don't have sleep apnea. And I don't know if the insurance is willing to pay for that. So who knows, right? Who knows? Cascade, how much you have to show 4 hours. You have to show 70%, which comes out to an average of 4 hours a night. So it's not difficult at all. So Sam, good morning. Sterling, good morning. Say it will be a good day. Yes, it will be. It's perfect weather. I should be doing this live feed outside, but it's perfect weather and perfect temperature. It's not supposed to be windy at all. So I might get some other stuff that I got to do around the house, and then there's some other business stuff that I can do for another stream of income. But I saw a load on Uber only wanting to pay like $260 a mile to go to New York City, like Manhattan. It was a load of windows. And I'm just like, no, not for $260 a mile. It had a bidding option, which I never win the bids on Uber. Convoy I do, Coyote I do, JB Hunt I do, but never ever on Uber. And I'm tempted to just put in 10 grand on the Uber app and see if they'll just laugh at me. I'm sure it'd be a good story in the office. Some guy nudges the other, hey, check this guy out. He said 10,000. That must be a typo, right? Good morning, Greg. Hope you are well. 56 degrees in Michigan. Yep, perfect. It got down to like 55 here, I believe. Perfect. Well, not officially summer yet, but it's perfect. Late spring, coffee in the morning, outside kind of stuff. So, all right, Rayman, you have a good weekend. So, 70%, I heard 60, but just cautious. I was always told 70, but it comes out to about 4 hours a night. So, welcome back. I drive sometimes. Welcome back. I still have my truck. I'm not like some people that are home 100% of the time. So 10K rejected. Yeah, TGI. I think that's Friday. Yep, it is Friday. I had to ask myself, is today Friday? I had to ask my wife, is today Friday? So, but we'll see. You know a guy in New York that could break some windows? See what I looked on the map. Uber's got the deal where you click on the load and you click on where it's going to, and number one, it didn't look fun. Of course, it's New York City, right? But my guess is it's a construction site. And so there probably wouldn't be a dock, which would be nice. But here's the thing. I know a gal. She used to be a trucking YouTuber. She used to be a flatbedder. She did LTL, and she did it all up in the Northeast. Little Trucker 1972, I think is what her name. She had a really good talent with her videos, too. She was really good at it. Good editor, And anyways, she would go up to, anytime I was up Northeast, I would call her because she knew every road up there, New Jersey, New York. And one time she took a load up to Manhattan, and she does LTL, or she did. She's a car hauler now, but she did LTL aluminum. And she had to deliver in some construction zones in New York City, and there was points where they had to move cars for her. And and she got fined for having a 53-foot trailer on the island of Manhattan. And but the company paid for it. So whoever gets that load, you got to realize that it's not going to be an easy run, not for no 260 a mile. We'll see. It's establishes it Friday. You can visit MT Fuel. I could just let him deliver it, bring it up to a certain point and let him deliver it. Cool Trucking, good morning. When I was doing step deck glass loads, paid very well, 2015 or so. Yeah, I mean there's another Brian Hall, not Ryan Hall, but Brian Hall, who's a Maverick driver, and he's on the glass division, and it's pretty interesting to see the stuff that he's dealt with, and then Tex Crowley, that's what he did a lot of windows for the last company he drove for, so. Those windows can be good paying loads. They're LTL usually, and you're going to job sites. Job sites can be a bit challenging. The company I was with used to have a contract with Bass Pro. We would deliver items to Bass Pro Shop when they were building a new one. And that was pretty interesting because Bass Pro Shops is not truck friendly to begin with. It's not easy to get in their docks. It's not easy to get in their parking lot, let alone, a mud pit with all the equipment around and stuff like that. So it was kind of interesting because I was bringing in decorative stuff and the parking lot wouldn't even be done yet. So it was, but yeah, if you, some of the decor in the Leeds, Alabama store, I brought that there. So. I don't know how often they redecorate the stores, but so Patrick, good morning. Scott SRO Logistics, good morning. Rick LP, good morning. When there are tolls and extra costs for loads, having Pro Miles King pin version can be useful. It will show fuel costs, toll costs, etc. Yeah, it's good to have those tools because, I have a story with a driver that years ago, he'd been on a load going up to New York City because he didn't mind going up there. And he didn't know the price to tell the broker. So he told the broker and what he thought was a fair price. And come to find out that by the time the load was done, then I just literally let that cat in. Oh, go on. And I'll just leave the door open. You gonna go outside? It's time to throw a cat. You gonna go out? Go on. The cat wants me to go outside with it, but this setup isn't too portable. But anyways, he lost his butt on that. After fuel and tolls, he made almost nothing. And that's why it's important to know the numbers. And there are tools out there like CDN Freight Brokers pointing out. Elon Musk is going to cut 10% of his employees in fear of recession. Thoughts? Well, it's interesting that you say that, Rick, because a lot of the billionaires are now calling it, right? They're calling for the start of the recession. And, before it was like, oh, no, everything's fine, but when the billionaires start cutting back, you know something's coming, right? So I had a real good conversation with a friend of mine from New Zealand, and we were talking about he's a big economist expert, and he's been calling this for the last 4 or 5 years. So I mean, it's happening. So those are my thoughts, Rick. It's happening. So just in fact, I got an email today from my phone carrier saying, hey, we're up in your bill, like for oh, what was the term that they used? Let me see here. They called it the economic adjustment charge. If you're a Verizon wireless customer, you just got an economic adjustment charge, which is, you know, that's the entire country right now, I believe. So, what are you going to do? Right? What are you going to do? But sorry, it's adjusting my phone here. Big Tail, good morning. That cat has you well trained. It does. It does. I hear a cat meow and I immediately open the door, whether it's really there or not. I'm hearing cat meows in my sleep. I love seeing places that have brought flatbed freight in after they've built. Feels like I'm a participant in society. Yeah, it's pretty neat. Those money mongers should have any say so on what they can and cannot shut down. Yeah, but they will. Right? Sage News, good morning. I saw that you uploaded a video. Cat scale is now 13 and 350. Really? Last I looked, it was 1250. 350 for a reweigh? Are you kidding me? Man, that's why I love my right way. Having my own trailer in the right way system on the truck and trailer, man, that is king. It saves a lot. It paid for itself within the first year. You know, I every now and then I'll do a cat scale just to check the calibration, or you know, if it's 45,000 plus, yeah, I'm gonna scale it and make sure I'm balanced decent. So, truck diver, good morning. Hope you're closer to a resolution to your truck issues. 350 reweigh. Wow, that's dumb. But you know, it's what it is, right? It's a sign of the times. I mean, I went Walmart shopping at Walmart yesterday. Got some meat, got some beard stuff, got some couple other things, and what should have been a $60-$80 bill was like 112. So I mean, the inflation's here, and if they're not upping the price on the product, they're lessening the product. So you're getting 10 ounces instead of 12 ounces. You know, that kind of stuff. You know, the spot market needs to start breaking down freight costs, especially to show tolls, permits, fuel. The way to start is to request a broker to break down the rate. I know, easier said than done. Yep, easier said than done, because not only for every truck driver that's not professional, there are brokers that aren't professional. And there are tools out there, though. 123 Low Board has got some good tools on showing that kind of stuff. But tolls are hard. Tolls can, you know, vary because, you know, like they go by weight, like in the Northeast. And then you've got, you know, and tolls keep going up, you know, and that was my biggest fear, right? Not fear, but concern was that while we were getting these sky high rates, they were going to up everything like tolls, fuel, and everything else. And that's exactly what happened. And then the rates come down. And you went from here to here. And it just, yeah. I'm becoming a librarian, less stress. There you go. Recessions usually last about 2 years. I've been told you should have 2 years worth of money saved to cover bills and such. First class, I agree with that. I agree with that. Seeing freight broker, not every driver runs the same roads. I remember when cat scales were $5 and free reweigh. Dang. How long ago was that? Cool trucking. So, anyways, the title of the video. Well, let me read. It's funny. We go to the store and say some should have cost X dollars. Shippers say the same about freight cost in a lane. Shipper thinks that should only cost. So, going to Lineage this morning. Dare me to check in 12 hours only. I don't know what lineage is. If you look, here's something that happens, right? If you check in 12 hours early, you come in and you go, oh, I thought they meant 9 a.m., not 9 p.m. Is there any chance to get loaded? My dispatcher said it was 9 a.m. Always blame the dispatcher. If you're self-dispatch, blame the dispatcher. Same thing. When you go in, you go, hey, my dispatcher wants to know when, how much longer before I'm loaded or unloaded. Don't shoot the messenger here. I'm just, I just want to know, my dispatcher, he's getting on to me, he's kind of an ass, I do that all the time. So early 90s. I bet you crossed paths with my dad at one point or another. Cool trucking. Let's see. Big Houston, I've been told that if it wasn't for people being on food stamps, Walmart would go out of business. Well, that whole I've been told, I don't know. You got to be leery of that. You can use food stamps at any store, but you get more bang for your buck if the prices are lower, right? So if you want, let's say, a can of chili, you can pay $1 at one store and it's $2 at another store. Well, if your food stamps are on the budget, so you're going to buy the dollar can, right? So that's, I think Walmart's doing just fine without welfare because there are Walmarts in good parts of town. So, where that doesn't have a whole lot of welfare. I always blame my dispatcher. There you go. Oh, sir, Lineage Logistics runs a large number of cold storage warehouses, notorious for never taking you early and long wait times in the door and waiting for one. So, Sterling, you have been warned by Mr. Oster there. And Oster, I like the fact that not like, but I thought it was interesting that there was a rumor about you being fired and all that. I thought that was funny. Not that you getting fired would be funny. It's just that, that rumor was trying to be spread. True Sage, broker and the carrier need to have that conversation when the rate was based on notes or out. And the other than the last 2 years, rates are in a range for 15 years. All the while, everything costs more over time. Yes. I blame my dispatcher too, John Armstrong. There you go. If I knew how much crap I talked about myself, I'd get fired for sure. There you go. Nothing witty. If Walmart paid their employees enough to not qualify for food stamps, it definitely impact their bottom line. They're basically subsidized by taxpayers. There you go. That's the real story. That's the real story. Nothing witty's a pretty smart person. Do I dare put the link in? Yesterday I did this and not one person wanted to do it. Greg's funny. Always blame her dispatcher, works for me. There you go. I was getting kind of nervous last night. Saw your truck still sitting there this morning. I was like, uh-oh. Hopefully it's not a cancel load. It's just attention. Yeah. Daniel Nami, good morning. Yeah, but like a lot of times, you either blame your dispatch or play stupid. What time's your appointment? They didn't give me an appointment time. Well, you have to have an appointment time. Okay. Or, one time I delivered a day early on something. And this is when I was still a company driver. My dispatcher literally told me, go in there and pretend that you thought it was today. And that's where I learned that trick, right? And that worked. That actually worked. They're like, don't insult my intelligence. Your dispatcher told you that. I'm like, yeah. He's like, put it in door 4. You Transland guys are troublemakers. YouTube drama will sadly always exist, but so will the truth. Believe whatever you will. Sadly, most people won't do enough investigation to find the truth. I just kind of like watch it all and just kind of like got my popcorn and just kind of like, the two people that are friends are now enemies and that kind of thing. And that's kind of where the title comes from. You are being manipulated to believe something for views and entertainment. Look at this guy. What is up, Mr. Sage?
What's going on, brother?
What up, Gene? Hey, I got a complaint with you. I got a complaint.
All right.
If I'm watching your video on my phone screen,
yeah,
using that little TV set, although it's a cool effect,
yeah,
I can't see the information that you're throwing at us very well.
Well, you just have to listen to what I say then. I'll have to make the screen bigger. I'll make
listen. When was the last time I've ever listened to whatever you had to say?
I don't listen to what I say either. You know what? And I think one of the things I was going to mention, because even CBN, I think the way to make bad brokers better is to make smarter drivers, right? Is to truly get them to understand their numbers. I think the biggest problem I'm having, because I'm moving a lot of legal freight now, because with some of the stuff I'm doing, is I'm finding out a lot of drivers have no idea their numbers, none at all. And like I said, and I'm not cheap at all. Trust me, I don't pay, but I'll post something for that kind of hot shot, and I'll post it for a hot shot, and I'll have step deck and flatbed drivers call me, and I'm like, and they want like $5 a mile for 2 cage ladders, and I'm like, this is a hot shot load. I can't get you $5 a mile. it's two ladders. So I think that what seems to be, where do you think the breakdown is? Where do you think the breakdown is in regards to numbers and understanding where to go with numbers as fuel goes up, as things go down in volume? Like, where does that break down? Is it, where do you see that happen, that cause?
Well, I have a few theories. Number one, when you have someone that comes out of CDL school and they work for a company, and then they're encouraged to lease from that company, they kind of manage everything for you. Like Prime's a part of that. What they'll do is they'll manage everything for you. They'll even add the stuff to your ELD for you, like your shipper information and all that. And so it's kind of like so there's that, right? They want you kind of green and not knowing better, and so they want you to, and because a lot of the leases, they don't want you knowing the true numbers, because if you did the true numbers, you would find out that a lot of these leases, you're actually making the same amount as a company driver, but you got more, but you're just in a different tax bracket. The other disconnect is you go from a paycheck to paycheck mentality, and suddenly now you're a business owner. So I've used this analogy before, but imagine getting your first job at McDonald's, flipping burgers, and then they hand you the keys and say, all right, it's yours. And this is one of the few businesses that you can put $200,000 into equipment without a degree, without business training at a college or school or whatever, and without a business plan for a bank loan. People will literally give you, hey, here's a $200,000 setup. You're a business owner now. Boom, there you go. And so it's and a lot of people don't want to be educated. And I know that when I first started, I was like, I don't want it. I'm going to do it my way. Mm-hmm. And I approached it as a truck driver, and that could have taken me out. And so the difference between somebody like me when I first started to like Shannon Thomas when she started, by listening to all the advice out there and tracking her numbers and treating it like a business, those are few and far between. And that's why a lot of small carriers suffer, is because you're not getting, and I'll let you in here in a second, Cascade. You're not getting,
don't.
You're not, it's, you're not treating it like a business, right? You're living paycheck to paycheck. So.
Yeah, and I think, and just so you answer, he asked hotshot. For hotshot for us, or for me at least, is I have 2 35-foot ladders that weigh about, I don't know, 1,500 pounds. So I'll put them on a 350 with a 40-foot trailer. That's a hot shot. And they'll just, no tarp and it'll just go. But the biggest issue is that, and I understand CBN and I do for my oversize, but as a freight broker, I can't tell each individual company what they should be making because I don't know, right? I don't know what you need as a carrier. I don't know how much you need. You need to know these numbers coming in. Like, you need to know your price on how much you're going to haul that for. And I think one of the biggest things is that so many times they're dependent on brokers to give them the right price, and they're not. A lot of times, they're not going to. And it's not even. I'm sorry, they're relying on the customer service agent that's on the other side of the phone to give them the right price to do this load. When you need to know your numbers.
Well, here, on the other side of that, Sage, here's the other thing. So, if like I've been on a load that John's on right now, it was showing $3,000 on the 30-day, and it was showing 3,100 on the 15-day.
Mm-hmm.
And if I didn't know my numbers of what I was wanting, and if I didn't know the lane,
Mm-hmm.
I talked to someone that lives in the area and says you can easily get that for $4,000, and I got it. And so now, if someone had called on that load and and they posted it for $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
They would have just taken it. Kenny Long's talked about that. Where
if that's his numbers, what's it matter?
What do you mean?
Okay, so because here's what happens on my end, just so everybody knows what'll happen on my end. Okay, we got a couple things that'll happen. So a customer will call me and say, "Hey, we got a couple options here." Customer calls me and says, "I need 10 loads right now. Get them in here. I don't care. We got to start this project. It's an emergency. Get them in here." Okay. I get a price on them, and they're paying, let's say I'm going to use simple numbers. They're paying $5,000. We get all 10 loads in there. The customer calls me back and says, "Okay, we don't need a rush anymore. I only need one a week or one every 2 weeks. So I don't need the expedited rate anymore. Just get me a rate, to be able to get them in here, obviously. But I don't need them rush now. So that same lane that just ran with the same product just became cheaper because the customer no longer needed it right now. They just need to cover every 2 weeks. Yeah. So when that customer called, oh God, you want to interrupt? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Why not? Let me get a word in edgewise here.
I know. So, good.
No, but to go to something that you've said in the past, Sage, brokers are kind of our sales department, right? But yet they don't know necessarily what our cost of operation is. They know what they can get that load for, right? So it's up to us to know what our cost of operation is. When you brought up the question, what's the disconnect? That was when I wanted in, because the disconnect is owning a business and driving a truck are two separate jobs that both require a number of hours to be worked every week. So if you're going to drive your truck 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, 6 days a week, you're right, or 7 days a week, then you're going to need to work another 2 to 3 hours a day to do your numbers, to do your math, to run the business, right? And it's probably not even that much, but guys don't, after working a 70-hour week, they don't want to put in the 5 or 10 hours that it might take to do the books, to understand the costs, to enter every receipt, to track every penny in and out of the business. Because if you don't track every penny, you don't know your real cost.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've determined that a lot of people don't do their cost. Sage's question is more about where was the disconnect? Why?
Yes.
We already know the what. Well, you don't know why. And I think that because there's not
time.
It's resources, right? So, I mean, OOIDA's got courses to teach you that. People get on YouTube, but I know people that drive a truck that don't have anything to do with YouTube at all. They're not on Facebook. They're not on, so getting that education out in a lot of these entry level owner operator positions, they intentionally kind of keep some of this information from you, or they cater it to their program. And so there's an educational disconnect. And I think that's what Sage is getting to. We all know that there's a lot of drivers that don't do their numbers. And we all know drivers that
right, but the question was why. But the question was, why don't they do their numbers? And I really liked what you were saying about how you move from company driver to lease operator for the same company. But they don't want you to be educated because they don't want you to know that you actually just took a pay cut to drive that brand new truck that's in your name.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they don't want it. They're not going to give you any resources to educate you. And so there is that side of it. But I also think there's just an element of moving from company person to business owner. And people don't understand that there's basically two jobs that need to be operated there. Or you need to outsource it, right? It's part of that learning curve from moving from company driver or company employee to business owner, because we've transitioned, we've moved up the chain in the grand scheme of the world's economy, the country's economy. We've moved up the chain. We're no longer at the bottom being told what we have to do every day. We've moved up to own something, to build something, and with that moving up comes a responsibility to do it well.
Well, allegedly you're moving up. Allegedly, they're telling you are, but sometimes you're not. No, just kidding.
No, you're right though too.
And I think this, like I said, getting back, and it's so a lot of times like spot market. If I have to spot market freight, a lot of times I might tell a customer, okay, look, this, I'm gonna use simple numbers. This is moving for $2 a mile, right? I know it's not a number, but it makes my life easier. But let me see what I can find. Let me see who's close. Let me get you, find a driver in the area or somebody one of my guys that can come get this, and let me see where they are. So a lot of times at that point, I'm going out and I'm saying, okay, I'm looking normally move this for blah, blah, blah. Cause that was what the customer wants to be. Cause the customer keeps track of numbers also, right? The customer knows what things cost also. Yeah, see, Hot Shot here, they don't do round trips. There's so many Hot Shots out here. A customer would never pay a round trip for a Hot Shot 350 40-foot trailer truck. There's so many of them that it's a lot more one way. So, so the customer kind of knows too. And I watched Jeff, and Jeff brought up one, that a broker's getting $6,000 and trying to move it for $2,000. I'm not going to say that never happens, but 90% of the time that's not going to happen because I have to compete against other brokers. So if the load's paying me $6,000, if I can get $6,000 and move it for $2,000, find me those customers. Please find me those customers who don't care. You know what I'm saying? So there is still competition among brokers to stay competitive financially. So it's not that we're just out there getting this money. A lot of times, like some of my customers will just say, hey, find me a close truck or get me a price for this because it's a spot market load. I'll get a price. I'll find a truck. I'll talk to the driver. I'll be like, hey, okay, where you at? I mean, they're normally moving for this, but blah, blah, blah is going on. I understand this. What about fuel, this or this? And then we'll go back with a price. And then obviously some of my customers, one of my older customers that I've been with a while, there's a markup I get. All right. I have based on the amount of volume. It could be 10% markup, could be 20% markup, could be 15% markup, because it depends on how much volume I'm doing to keep that moving. So I'm just trying to figure out where when you guys are out there looking for freight and stuff like that, it's like you guys need to know what your numbers are, baseline. Right? Baseline. You should be knowing that before you're even calling out my load. It is, although I'm the sales department, I'll do what I can. It's one of those things that if it's not my job to tell you your numbers.
Well, I'll give you an example. I got a text message a couple of years ago. This guy had bought a truck, bought a trailer, started his own authority, hired a company driver to drive that truck because he wasn't a truck driver. And then he texted me going, hey, is this normal for load rates? And at that time, I think the national average was about 2. And I'm like, well, what's your cost? he had no idea. And here he is,
That's just
a carrier, an owner, and somebody's feeding their family based off this guy knowing what he's doing, you know. And that it's a mindset thing. I know company drivers that have a really good mindset, and then I know people that, you know, they buy the truck, they buy the trailer, they get on the spot market, and then five days later they're like, oh, I had no idea my costs were going to be $3 a mile. You know, they didn't do the research beforehand. But welcome, CDN. Good to see you.
Morning.
I'm sure you want to add to this.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, you know, coming from a broker standpoint, I think, yeah, that when you think about it, take a step back even to the other conversations we had about the trucking business. So when you think about trucking business and you compare it to, say, like, take the .com industry. When the .com started, what happens in California even to this day, right? You have startups. Nowadays, that's the big thing. If you have a new concept, you're going to sell a widget, you have something to solve a need, you go to these pitch fests and you get these people who want to invest, similar to a Shark Tank concept. Well, so Uber Freight comes into the marketplace. So everyone thought, okay, let's see what happens there. Well, I'm pretty sure that if the numbers are out there, and Sage might know better or someone else, but I recall, maybe it's changed, but the first 3-4 years that Uber Freight came in, the only way that they survived is because of the Uber ride. The money from Uber Ride supported Uber Freight. They were running out of off.
That trucking company lost a lot of money. Yep.
Right. So then Convoy Freight comes in, and when Uber Freight joined the marketplace and Convoy Freight, they didn't hire a bunch of ex-truckers. They hired a couple, but most of the people they hired were ex-employees from Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., and Microsoft and Apple. They were all tech people. So those two are the two big players. Now, other companies have, JB Hunt and so forth, has taken on concepts to put their click and goes into place. But where I'm going with this is that when you look at you know, we've seen also in the last, you can go on the internet and just type up trucking bankruptcies from last year. There's hundreds, right? And when you start to read into them, what's happened was you take some of the companies, and I'll use Lakefield Motor Express, LME, up in the Northeast. That was a business that was they were in business for something like 40 years as a family. They jumped onto they had terminals all around the Northeast. They jumped into the Amazon game, and then the Amazon game kind of went egg on their face, and they shut their doors. Other companies, there's been trucking companies where there's been a few financial companies that were not trucking based, just financial based, comes into the marketplace. They thought, hey, let's get into the trucking game. They invest into this trucking company, find out that trucks cost a lot of money to run. They couldn't scale to where they believe it should have gone, and those companies went bankrupt, or they shut the doors, they pulled their money out. And so we're seeing, the summary is that our investors, multi-billion-dollar investors, jumping to the gun to buy trucking companies, and the answer we know is no, because it's a hard business, right? And
Jeff talked about that, you know, about these umbrella companies that come in and buy a piece of a trucking company and then don't know what they're doing, and usually it takes the company out.
Well, we're seeing like this week alone. You can look again. This week we're seeing Heartland. We've seen it with Knight and Swift, and we see it time and time. If Jeff wants to grow, he's up to however many 10+ drivers. The fastest way, if Jeff wants to go to the next level, he buys a company with 5, 7, 10 trucks. That's the fastest way to grow. Just like a broker, they buy some other, you know, like you see it all the time. Either a brokerage who's growing really well will sell off, say, their intermodal division. They'll sell off their heavy haul division, right? So the point is, and then when we look back, if we looked at Wikipedia, how far back, when did owner operator start? Because I know when I started freight brokering, the bane of my trucks were trucking companies with an owner that went out there and they had one truck, and then they bought themselves 2, 3, 4 trucks, and they bought about 20 trailers. They had more trailers than trucks all the time. And then, but they found that they hired drivers. They might have had 1 or 2 good ones, but they had a lot of bad drivers that wrecked their equipment. And all of a sudden, I think the small trucking companies took a small chapter out of the mega carriers with the lease programs and started saying, hey, you come on with your own equipment. This way you look after your stuff. We'll provide you the trailer. We'll get you the loads. And now all of a sudden, like Sage and I, Steve, you could tomorrow start your trucking company with no trucks and become a trucking company if you get just like what Jeff did. Jeff had a truck and he has the experience. But the point is, you can start a trucking business. So the whole summary back to the disconnect where Sage is bringing it in is, I believe, it all began with the elusive idea that some driver who was waking up, coming into work, had to drive in some guy's dirty truck the day before, had all of a sudden he thought, geez, there's the opportunity for me to get my own truck. I can personalize it to myself, set it up the way I want. So there's that goal. So they didn't know nothing about business. They just wanted a nicer truck. And then that led to the lease. But because they're jumping into the lease, they never actually had to sit down and do it because the freight was being brought to them. They just had to agree to the lease terms and start paying. They never actually had to sit down. Like if you actually went to the bank and you're going to go to a trucking company might be different. Like if you're going to go to Kenworth or PACCAR and get your loan for them. But if you just went to your local community bank looking for a truck loan, you had even if you saved up, you have $30,000 to put down on a $180,000 truck. They're going to say, okay, well, let's see your business plan. So let's see now. So you're going to be waking up, calling some people that you don't even know, and you hope to get their freight. So how much money are you going to make a month? Well, it varies from week to week. Whoa, sorry, we're not going to give you credit, right? So if they actually if you went through the process, like if you don't have that base knowledge of how trucking works, I believe, like people outside the world of trucking don't understand it, right? When you're in the game, you understand it, but it just, I think that there's that whole issue around that lack of knowledge, and that's no different. I see it time and time again with shippers. I have a customs broker that calls me, that refers people to me, and I'm seeing this such a big trend, especially during the past 2 years. People come into the shipping game, they want to just hire trucks, and they have no clue. And I have a customer that is well experienced, and they're still struggling with setting up their process. Like I'm guiding them, but it's all about, I keep telling my customers, when you work the spot market, especially in 2022, we have so many new drivers. You used to think, a lot of my customers say, well, they're professional drivers, they should know. I keep telling them, go in with the attitude. When that truck arrives, he pulled a load. If he's hauling your stuff today, he might have hauled something the day before. Every load is different for him. Assume he's a brand new driver, knows nothing. So if you have certain procedures, how you want stuff strapped, etc., how you want things done, you have to lay out the process. And if you're not prepared, that's what the reality of being in the spot market is.
Yeah, and I think that's where, and let me ask you this, CBN, I'm running into a lot of, me moving the legal freight now, I'm running into a lot of customers that are over budget. Are over budget per se because of the cost of things that they budgeted for, because we do things last year, but now are basically saying, look, what's going on? Why are costs this much? Why is this? Why is this? Why is this? Right? And I mean, prices are dropping now, but when prices were shooting up there, or I'm running into people my biggest other problem I had was I ran into somebody that the person retired, who I worked with all the time, and were replaced with somebody who did not even know what an RGN trailer was. I had to send her pictures of all the different trailers and say, because everything was a flatbed to her. Everything was a flatbed. And I'm like, no, you don't need a flatbed. You need this trailer. And so I had to send pictures so she understood what she was asking for. So how are you starting to see a lot in that aspects where basically the shippers are at a loss of knowledge just as much?
Well, no, actually, I see the shippers. I have two scenarios. I have my shippers that I've trained where they actually will, like if they're bidding on a job, they call me, I get a quote. Like when I quote, if I showed you my history of my quotes, like I quote to execute. If I've done my research and I've talked to my carriers, when the load comes up 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the road, I don't go out and post it. The carriers I spent the time and talked to, I call them. Unless they say I can't do it, Rob, then I have to go alternate. But I execute. Like I have plans to execute. These are my carriers. I'm sticking to the guns. Like I'm not going to backdoor them and everything else. So the summary is, but I am seeing a lot of carriers will say, "Oh, well, that's a lot higher than we thought." I'll ask them, "Well, did you get a quote?" "Well, no, we just thought it should cost this much." That's the starting point, because everyone, just back to Steve's concept where he says, that I don't think my comment came through, Steve, but I've been laughing because I've been hearing this all the time. We go to the store and we say, "Oh, your wife wants you to build a new fence, new deck." You say, "Well, those boards should only cost $6 a board and they're costing $12. They should only cost $6. Well, hang on a second. Did you make those boards? So we have that perception. We go to the store, we think that something should cost something, but when it comes to trucking, When you're in your own business, we want the highest dollar, right? So it's that perception of value. So some customers, they basically, they take like I have some customers, they literally take the value of the load. So if it's worth $25,000, they'll put 5% or 8% to the value of the load, and they think that's what the freight should be versus what the actual cost
or
is.
they'll use last year's price.
Yeah.
Well,
And to Daniel's question, why I don't have a channel is two reasons. One, I don't think I'm interesting enough to do it, and secondly is it is a challenge. That's why you don't see a lot of freight brokers having channels, because
that's why CDN's friends with me, is because I think he wants to use my platform because he does have a message to get out there. One of the things that stands out to me is that when like, for example, when I called the broker for this load that I got, $1,000 over the 30-day, I wanted to prove to the broker that I wasn't just shooting a high number for no reason. That seems to be a common thing when someone enters a spot market. They'll get hung up on a lot because they're asking for this ridiculous price. And the reason being is not because of the price, but because if someone goes, hey, I need 5,000 to do this, 1,000-mile run, going to Columbus, Ohio, that shows the broker that you don't know what you're talking about. I don't want you on my freight, right? So when I asked for the high number, or when I do ask for a high number, I go, okay, well, where it's going is a pretty dead area. I'm looking at 250-mile deadhead. It's through the mountains, so I'm gonna deal with fuel, and I want to be able to cover myself because it's an extra day with the extra stop. I used the point that I knew why I asked for that money versus someone that just calls, I need $10,000 to go to New York City. No, you don't.
Well, I might.
What you're doing, I don't think I can trust you in New York with my freight. Click. So.
That's a great point, Steve. So, like, understanding how to sell your price too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I booked a load, went 150 miles. It was 110-mile deadhead to get to it. They had it posted for $10 a mile, right? But I asked for more money. But I explained why I wanted more money.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you have line haul and you have your stops in it, but what you don't have for me is that this load is going to carry into another day. Mm-hmm. So I need more money but I'll be able to cover it.
And I think, and let me I want to back real quick and mention this as the point of that is that a lot of times that what I do or what CDN does is, my point is that shippers sometimes don't know what's going on. And it takes people like me and CDN to basically say, okay, let me explain to you what's going on and break that down and tell them why a cost is a cost, right? So there are, even if it's a newer customer, like I have some customers that have been in forever, he has some, but if it's a newer customer, a lot of times they'll have what they have last year or what they've had last month, but they're not going to have what they have today. And I think that's where, someone like CDN or myself have to come in and say, okay, here's why the cost is what it is, but this is a guaranteed truck and so on and so on and so on. So it's not just brokers saying, I have all this money and a customer saying, well, I have a blank check for you. Here you go. I have to explain and sell that services and explain why that price is to that customer for me to be able to get my money and for you to be able to get your money. And that's pretty much one of the other aspects that I'm doing a lot more of now, is explaining things than I have ever before any of this happened. And that's why I wanted to see if you were also having, but it sounds like you have pretty customers.
You have brokers that want to educate their customers, but then you also have a lot of customers that will just use a 3PL that go into the lowest bidder, like Bricks. Right. They know the product's cheap. They know why sometimes it might struggle to move. So it's a little bit about leverage, right? So if you're in middle of nowhere, Wyoming, and you're a shipper of bricks, you might have to pay more than the guy in downtown Dallas because there's less trucks. So you got less leverage. So it's about leverage and education.
Well, back to Sandman's point about taking a minute to do your business. So whether you're a broker or the carrier, writing down, I mean, we always harp about everyone should have a TMS. Even if you don't want to have a TMS, you should have a notebook. Because just the other day, I get this email, and it's from a different company I don't know. But the load that they asked me to quote, I'm like, this seems very familiar. Then I started seeing on the email list a name of someone that's very familiar. And I realized that this was a company that they just changed the name. So the fellow was asking about a new load. So I thought I'll better call this guy since it's a new company name. And I just, we had a quick conversation. I'm like, oh, okay, I know this load. He's like, yeah, we have another shipment coming in. Long story to it is basically the portion, I'm only doing one leg of the shipment that's coming from overseas and so forth. I'm doing one thing, but the summary is they asked me look for a quote. Well, I look back into my history and I see the rates. I'm like, that seems awfully high. So luckily in my quote, I didn't just have a flat rate. I had a breakdown. I broke down my charges and I realized that the last one, there was a customs delay, which caused storage fees. And so out of that, there was $500 in storage fees. So I told them, oh yeah, last time we did this price, but this included this much storage fees. Or we had a wait time. Like I had another one where there was 2 hours of driver wait time at the intermodal yard and so forth. So that is part of the critical thing, is that you can look back. Like just last night, I sent an email to a customer. When they sent me the original quote request, I said, well, there's a construction site and then there's a strip mall. Which one is it delivering to? And they didn't respond to me. So when I gave them the quote, I showed them because I assume it was an LTL van freight. So I said, if it's going to construction site, there's going to be this fee, and if there's a lift gate, if my address is, and I sent them a picture of what I used, and I said, if those services not used, my quota is set up. I just have to remove the lift gate fee, move the construction fee, and it's gone, and I can execute that quote instantaneously. So it's the time to take the planning. I've seen other quotes where people just reply back with a flat rate. No descriptions, no explanations, no nothing. That's, hey, everyone's got their own choice. But I think it just goes back to this whole conversation around the disconnect, I believe, is tied to the lack of, everyone just wants to jump in without actually learning the processes for each of the areas that you're in. Because every area is unique, but the key is that you learn what you're doing.
Correct. And that's my thing too. But
no, and I like that because with the previous business that I ran, I had competition. They just submit a bid, straight line item price at the bottom of the list. Not even really a description of what they're going to do, right? And I would break my bids all down, and I'd break it all down and where the money was going, right? And then they would be like, well, wow, you're 40% higher. Well, but I'm giving you a different service. The product that I'm going to give you is different than what they're doing, or you don't even know what they're doing.
Right.
Well, there is a guy that's on YouTube. I should almost share it out to Steve and he can put it out. But there's this guy, he focuses on contracting, but he does a video that clearly breaks down step by step how to truly, like when you hear a contractor, plumber, a carpenter, painter say I'm $40 an hour, $25 an hour, whatever the price is per hour, he breaks it down to tell you exactly. Because when you, like the other day I was hearing, let's take a big trucking company. Okay, so you're a trucking company with 50 or plus, like a bigger trucking company, 50 plus power units and so forth. So now you got drivers that you're coming in there. So let's say there's a trailer breakdown or a truck breakdown. When and where do you pay that driver? So if drivers are feeling, hey, I should be paid or compensated for the time because if the trailer that you're giving me breaks down, you should pay me for that. Where does that come from? Right? If a trucking company, if Jeff or Sandman, if you went out there and you had 10 trucks, so you got 5, let's say you end up just fluking out, you got 10 trailers, 10 flatbeds. And then you hired 6 owner operators. So you got 4 extra that you could kind of drop and stuff like that for some contracts.
Move them around, yep.
Yeah. So all of a sudden that owner operator, he goes and there's an airline leak or there's brakes that, the brakes are bad and he's in the middle of a load. Now he lost a day and you have to pay him for that time. Where's Sandman getting that money from? Right? He has to build and yet you're bidding on a load by load basis. Where does that money come from? That's no different than any business. Walmart, when they have a problem, like it doesn't matter any business, but where does that money come from? That's what I don't hear anyone talking about. That when a driver gets compensated, like I know a lot of Canadian companies to hire an owner operator or to hire a company driver. They're like, even you guys, when you're company drivers, if you hind on to where Steve, you started your business, when you first started, when you signed on, you knew before you even, when you wake up in the morning, you know that you're getting paid $50 for every drop you do and pick up. You know that if you're at the shipper for so long, you don't even have to think about it. You're getting paid 40, 50 bucks, 25 bucks an hour, no matter what.
Right.
The company has to find a way to recover that, right? So they have to look at it. So that's kind of the thing is when we have a whole bunch of independent truckers running owner operators, like Salmon, to your point, knowing your numbers, well, guess what? You know your numbers, like on your truck, you probably know everything about your truck, every moving part, like you just know every nook and cranny, the goods, the bads, how you deal with stuff. You add 6 trucks to your fleet, I guarantee you can't micromanage 6 trucks. You have to
No, you can't. You
have to
can't.
look at the big picture.
And I would like to say that Sandman has finally come over to the dark side, is now part of the chain gang. Yes, baby. No more of this stuff.
Go back to Sage's original question. I think a lot of drivers to know they're afraid of the truth. I've actually had a driver tell me, I don't do my numbers because it stresses me out, because he knows the reality is fuel's probably like 45% of his revenue, and you know, and you want to feel like a big bad owner operator, but then you sit there and you're like, oh wow, I'm only profiting 30 cents a mile, so I'm basically a company driver for 30 cents a mile, except I got to pay the bill when the truck breaks down.
So it's not 30 cents a mile is what you're saying.
It goes back to mindset. A lot of people don't even want to know the truth of their numbers. And then you got these same people that they might have an opportunity to, like, for example, when I first got in the spot market, I had a broker, hey, here's an opportunity to be dedicated, give me a rate. And I was quoting them spot market rates because, and not realizing, not being educated enough, not being in the game long enough to know that, well, no, we don't want spot rates. That's why we're offering this to you. We want a consistent rate. And I didn't put 2 and 2 together until, I wonder why I'm not winning these bids. And probably because I didn't know my numbers very well also. So, I mean, there's, like what CDN said about Sandman, if you got 6 trucks, I mean, that's a lot of math that a lot of people don't even do for 1 truck, let alone.
No, but that's the thought process of an owner of that carrier that has those 6 trucks, right? I know my truck inside and out, but I can't know 6 more, right? Because I don't see them every day. But that's where business planning and going to the dispatch department and saying every truck needs to come through the shop every 30 days. So that we get a chance to look at it and see what's going on with it, and asking the dispatcher, hey, if there's anything going on with that truck, fill out this form and send it over to the mechanics with a unit number, right? Well, having processes and procedures in place so that you can keep track of all that stuff.
But I think, Salmon, when you're going through that process of micromanaging 1 truck to master that ability, because when you know what you were able to do as an owner operator yourself, and you ran that truck yourself, and then you hire your 2nd driver and you see that he's able to replicate, then you hire the 3rd driver and he's not replicating what the first 2 have done, it creates a base so that when you see 6 trucks and you see one cost of the truck is super high, you can probably associate it to a driver who's not taking enough due care and attention.
Right.
But see, to Cool's Trucking, I'll let Steve jump in, but I think that, yes, that's what I was going to say is the disconnect happened was that elusive goal of becoming an owner operator to get your own truck so you have your own equipment, which is great, but just realize that you're entering into a market that just because you own that owner operator doesn't mean that you're guaranteed certain incomes. Like there's things that it's a risk reward, right? You're taking on that risk to say, I have my own truck where no one's going to sleep in it, they're not going to smoke, they're not going to have their burritos from the night before that you're walking into, but then you have to be willing to accept the market depending on what you're doing. If you're on a contract, that's a whole different story. Right. But if you're working the spot market and you're jumping in as an owner operator, you can't just say, well, hey, I bought all this brand new equipment, so I need $5 a mile. If I don't get $5 a mile, I'm going to go out of I'm going to be bankrupt. Well, that's an issue.
And let me, Cool Trucking, I can read it. Sometimes it's not about the money. It could be about the freedom why a person goes owner operator. Freedom of choices sometimes could be the priority. And I understand why they're doing it. And so that wasn't really my thing. And not that I'm trying to stay back on topic, because I think this is an important topic, is it seems like, are people waiting until they've gone past the point where it's like, uh-oh, I'm broke, to actually sit down and know, like, knowing those numbers and making those business decisions should be first, not last. And I just seem to, like I said, I've been talking to a lot more, like I said, legal freight, because I've been, with the legal stuff, I have my normal oversized guys, and they just show up, right? I work with them forever. But when I start to deal with a lot of these local guys, I'll post a load, and it just seems like they don't know the business aspect. And my question is, where does that lie? At some point, is it not the responsibility of the driver, now becoming owner operator, to sit down and know what it takes? And if it is his, where's a comfortable place to learn that?
Well, my comment to Cool Trucking, I don't know why he left the feed, but is that I had the same mentality, right? And I still do. It's about the freedom, right? Because so when the math comes in and I'm not making much more than a company driver, I understand, I'm well prepared for that. And I've built my lifestyle around that. I don't have the latest, greatest toys, nor do I want them. But to me, just like the driver I talked to a few years ago that said it stresses them out to do the numbers, to me, it would stress me out to not do the numbers. And so for me, an aspect of that freedom is knowing what my number is. And if I know that I can sit at home for 4 days without any consequences, then knowing that number allows me to do that. Whereas if I take, a month off and I don't know that I can't handle that because I don't know my numbers, now all of a sudden you're playing catch up, and then the truck breaks down, then it's just kind of a spiral. So I get the whole freedom. I'm not in this for the money either. I mean, but money has to be a part of it. And by knowing your numbers, it allows you even more freedom, because now you're like, well, you know what? I've made my numbers this month, so I can take the rest of the month off. Or, looks like I want to buy a new pickup, so it looks like I'm going to have to step it up X amount of miles, X amount per mile, X amount per revenue per day or whatever. Knowing those numbers allows that freedom to happen. They kind of go hand in hand.
Exactly, Steve. Like, to your point, and to Cool Trucking's point, he's right about the freedoms, because like Steve and Cool Trucking, I believe, because I know there's drivers that do it. Steve, if you didn't get to the position because of your connections and just how things worked in life, but if, let's just say you're working with Jeff still as an owner operator, but the other stuff didn't fall into place, you just continued as an owner operator, and you did pay off your truck, you actually, if you had been running all this time, you were in a position where you could have sat down with your wife and with Jeff and yourself and come up with a plan. And I guarantee that even if you did it today, you could say, I'm not going to do this dispatching, the safety stuff. It gives you the freedom to be at home, but you could probably run your truck for 10 months of the year and have 2 months off, or even not. You're probably in that position where you could be doing that. You could take off a whole summer, or take off, January, February, December, January, or whatever. But the point is, I know that there's drivers that do that. You get to that point when you have your cost down. That's one nice thing. Like, when you think about, like what Cool Trucking is talking about, the freedom to have your choice. So that driver who gets into the lease, the benefit is the bad, obviously there's the downside that he's in this lease, he doesn't really know his numbers, but guess what? He's in a truck he likes, but he can start running tomorrow. He gets money as soon as he starts. You take a broker, right? If you look at it like a race, well, you take someone who becomes a freight broker with no customers, and as someone who goes out into a lease. Well, if they go a lease or gets a financing for a truck, well, they can go in the spot market and start moving loads. Even if it's cheap loads, they'll still get cash flow coming in. A broker, when they first start, that could be 3-6 months a year before they're getting good enough income that they're making full-time wages. Now, that's the first year, so you compare the two. But then the long term, the broker can surpass that driver, because once he establishes a book of business and the freight starts coming in, it changes. And to your point about knowing your numbers, making decisions, it's no different. And Sage might agree, is that if you're going to become either your own broker or a broker agent versus becoming an owner operator, staying a company driver, I could make the case myself as an agent. I'm an agent, I'm not the broker, where it might be better for me to go work for a company in sales or something similar, that skill sets I have, because I can go work for a company where I get a pension, I would get 2 to 3 weeks paid vacation and benefits. I don't get any of that for myself. So why am I doing this? Well, again, it comes back to what Cool Trucking was saying: freedom, the choice to do. So there's pros and cons. You make I get a little bit of tax benefits, but I also have the consequences and the stress. If I don't book a load, if I lose money in a load, I'm taking a loss. If I don't move a load today, I make no money.
Right.
Pure and simple. Right.
And for me, going full broker, not being an agent, was the fact that the brokerages that I saw were limiting to allowing me to do what I wanted to do, which was the oversized, the super loads and stuff like that. Right. There was a limit to what they would allow me to do. So me going on my own, I'm like, well, I know this, I want to do this. I'll open my own. But at that point I already had customers. I already had them. I had, like 6 or 7 customers. And that's kind of how I rolled into it. And I, coming from a driver, but to stuff like that. So it allowed me freedom. The next step of freedom from being that agent is because I wanted to move oversized, and that was my path, and that was the path which allowed me to do the YouTube channel and so on and so on. And because I know a lot of people are asking him, it's not easy to be a freight broker like CDN, where he moves a lot more legal freight and stuff like that, and do a YouTube channel. It's because he moves a lot more volume based, where I move a project based. So it's easier for me. But that was, for me being a broker, that was the path I wanted to go on. I wanted to move the oversized freight and do that, quality over that quantity. So it's like I said, and I just think that it's one of those things that with the trucking, I understand the freedom. I just see that I've got guys even texting me and saying, hey, and maybe I'll throw this out here now. Is it a good time to go out and buy a W-9 and get into the trucking industry? I mean, that's the questions that I'm getting next to me. And it's like, and here's the best part is he has a job right now that he's making 6 figures driving. Okay. Yeah. He's a company guy though, just what we just talked about. And now he wants to buy a W-9 and get into trucking with his own authority. And these are I just think these are the questions and the texts or the emails I'm getting, that it's like, what's broken here? Because there's tons of, you know what I mean? Like there's tons of information between, the channels that we do and everybody else. And it's like, what would you tell that guy? What would you guys say to that guy?
So how I answer those questions, and I get those questions a lot. I say, well, here's where your challenges are. What are your goals? I would ask them, what your goals? Is it about freedom? Is it about money? Is it about just having the cool truck to retire with? There's all these different reasons. And then tell them what the challenges will be. Well, fuel is getting close to $7 a gallon. W-9s tend to get anywhere from 4.5 to, maybe no lower than 6 or no higher than 6 on fuel mileage. What are you going to pull with it? I mean, are you just going to do generic dry van freight with the W-9? Or are you going to go in the tanker? What, how much money do you have saved up? And here are the challenges, and recognize that you're only going to make X amount, at the end of the day. And so and most of the time people just want you to, yeah, man, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Because they've already made a decision. They just want you to validate it. Right. And so what I try to do is I was like, okay, here's what you need to look at. Here's the challenges. Here's the position you'll want to be in. And here's some resources for you to learn even more. Do a business plan. I've got a friend of mine that's trying to start a brick and mortar business. And I told him, said, I'll go in with you on this, but you need to have a business plan, because that's what the bank's going to want, and these are the challenges you're going to be facing. This is what we're going to be dealing with. This is this, this is this, this is this. And most people don't want to hear that. Most people don't want, like, I'm just going to do it. Well, that's fine, but here's the storm you're looking into, and so that's how I handle that, because people are going to do what they're going to do. And this business is designed for people to come in with very little or no education at all. And that's, and so the higher the risk, the higher the reward. However, that's not always the case in this industry. So
no, I think that it all comes down to the goals and what you're looking after. Because if you're just going to buy a truck, stay in a small area, you want to run, you're willing to run some weekends because you want time off in the weekdays for whatever reason, or vice versa, whatever the lifestyle that, if you're doing the trucking game, you're buying a used truck and, you know, you're not going across the country, you're just going to run a small area. You're going to deal with the money that you can get. And you're not worried about gaining customers. You're not worrying about growing. You're not going to ever add a driver. That's a whole different game, right? Because that's the problem, is that it's like no different than what Sage goes through. Like Sage does it all himself, but and he has, you know, he uses factoring to help on the back end. But at the same token, though, he has connections that he bounces ideas with. But at the same token, though, you also don't have, like, you know, he has to, if he was to grow and scale, like to add agents and all that, his world changes significantly, because adding agents is not as easy. It's just like adding a company driver. It's not easy.
No, it's not.
It's like most brokers want someone who has a book of business. Well, that's hard to get unless they're not happy, right? If they're not happy where they were at the brokerage, that's the only reason you get them, because that broker couldn't provide something. And so most of the time, you know, unless you found someone, you're like, man, that person's a great salesperson. I think that they would be excellent. So how you can start them is saying, have you ever considered freight brokering? And they're like, no, I don't even know nothing about it. And you talk to them, explain it, and they're like, oh, that sounds interesting. But you're not going to get that person to leave their day job without any income. So how you can start that then is you can say, okay, well, if you have free time, why don't you start calling some customers? If you can get to a contact where they'll say, yeah, give me a quote, I'll be that person to do the quoting. You get the freight, I'll give you the commission on the loads, or we split the commission. And as they gain enough momentum, then they can say, oh, now I'm at the point where you can, all of a sudden, they can leave their job and become your agent, right? That you can progress it. Being a driver, you could kind of do that. You can go out, get your CDL, keep doing your job. Maybe you could find a local company that needs help on evenings, weekends, doing evening runs. Like, I mean, Pepsi and Coke run side bays where they have afternoon shifts and they have evening shifts. And so there's other companies out there that could be a bread company where you're, you know, so you could get your feet wet. But I agree, Steve, that the whole key is that you gotta, in the trucking industry, I think you need to dip your toe in various styles of trucking to find out what you like and don't like. Because, you know, you ask guys like, we never talk about gravel, right? Hauling gravel. Well, that's a whole separate channel. There's all kinds of intricacies and understanding how that market works and how they pay and the struggles and the pros of that. And the, you know, logistics is such a big thing. And that's the thing I guess I would say is, if you want to go out and do it yourself, there's absolutely no problem with that. But there's a lot of areas where you becoming an owner operator for a company, you get that freedom to do your own choice. And if you're in a non-forced dispatch environment, that gives you that freedom to choose your freight, but then you're not alone. If there's a problem, you have some sort of backing to help you out. That's what's nice about being part of something else.
All right, another question for you. I'm taking this channel over for both of you guys to answer. Now doing the interview. New person coming in, let's say 21 years old, CDL, either wants to driver, new broker. What is somebody, or that's interesting, right? Might be interested. What is something you're basically telling that new person coming in that's just stepping in to either expect or to prepare them to move up in both driving and brokering?
I would say the quick answer is, if they really want to be a driver, they can go and become that, work for a mega company, go through the whole process so you learn the craft of driving. And then what I would be doing is, if they really wanted this, go to, usually most colleges, universities will have a self-guided business program. Take a business course, get a business certification as you're doing it. Or if you're 21 and you haven't done any of that, maybe your better choice is just say, you know what, go work for a year, save up some money, doing whatever you can do. Go to community college or university, take a 2-year business course to give you some base to work with. And if you want to be a driver, then you could, you know, maybe drive part-time, you know, like I said, get your CDL at the same time, gain some of that, because, you know, we always talk about, you know, like the last video where we were talking about understanding the dispatch process. Well, there's a whole process for acquiring customers. Well, what about, you know, we never talk enough about marketing. You know, that's the number one bane. What is marketing? Marketing is many avenues, but just my daughter and her brother and her boyfriend, he's currently in accounting school. He's in business. He's in university taking accounting. He's doing he's on a co-op program. He's working for a big firm. So they had a big appreciation night. There were 600 people there, right? The lawyers for the firm, their customers, all the staff. Now, imagine like Jeff, or other like even myself. I have customers. I go out there and I'll take them for lunches, but I'm almost at the point where I have my one customer where I'm thinking about doing like in one city. I'm actually considering if I want to do a bit of a city tour to go see some of them. Maybe because they have multiple locations, I might go in there and say, okay, I might just rent a room someplace and create a barbecue. That's gonna be a lot of money on my end because that's my customer. It's my business. My broker is not going to support that.
Right.
So I have to build that into my business plan. Is it going to be what's my return for that? So meaning, how many drivers out there, like Steve, if you have brokers, how many brokers, because you're an owner operator, not Jeff, how many of the owner operators within your company or any other company have gone out there and either said, hey, set up a barbecue tent, went into the town where there's a couple of your brokers, take them for lunch, or set up a barbecue and invited them all in as an appreciation dinner? Probably none.
Well, that's difficult the way our company is structured, but Big Rig CO, who's appeared on this channel, one of the main brokers he's using to stay off the low boards is from Springfield. So he's offered to pay him lunch.
But also,
I know I've sent gift cards to the brokers, to kind of as a good thank you. Christmas time's a good opportunity to do that, that kind of thing. But go ahead, Sage.
Yeah, no, you also, what a new driver coming in, basically getting his CDL license or either getting and having that, what's some of the stuff that you would tell him to do, like to fix what, make sure that he gets on that right path? Like, what's some of the stuff a new person should know getting in?
Well, when you get your CDL, number one, finding a good company and at least staying there for at least a year. Don't fall for the grass is greener stuff. And save as much money. If they're like young, early 20s, single, no kids, save. Don't go out and create a bunch of debt and blow all your money. Save and invest, and then learn. Just kind of entrench yourself. If you feel like you want to move the reefer, start talking to reefer drivers, start looking at reefer forums online or whatever. I know that there was a point where I was getting frustrated with dock times in the dry van, so I started looking at tanker. And because of conversations that I had with other drivers, I know 3 drivers that went to the tanker side, and they absolutely loved it. And I was about to pull that trigger when I decided to go this route instead, because I have experience knowing the owner operator world because of my dad. Now, I've never had an interest in reefer, again, because of the knowledge I had with my dad. I definitely didn't have the interest in going in the flatbed because I'm the guy who can't tie his stuff in the back of the pickup. And
mental note, don't drive behind him. Go ahead.
Right. And the tanker thing really did appeal to me because of the way that drivers are treated at the shippers and receivers. So just educating yourself. And like you've said before, there's more to our world than just truck and dock, right? There's more than just, a guy on the phone telling you this is your load, right? So just to kind of entrench. Now, there has to be a passion for this job a little bit. There has to be an enjoyment that comes out of this job. Most people don't last. I mean, I don't know what the exact ratio is, but there's a lot of people that don't make it their first 2 years. They're like, I'm done with this job. The first 2 years, you're struggling just to learn where to drive, how to drive, to make sure you're not taking down power lines or signs or, hitting bridges and backing into these tight spots, so you don't have time to focus on the other things. So I always recommend people being out here 4 or 5 years. You have a few seasons under your belt. You've done all 48 states before you really kind of dive into the type of ownership that you want to do.
Well, and I was going to say, I agree with you. Like, I think first and foremost, like based on when I was on Sage's channel, a lot, and even including yourself, our fathers have, a lot of the people who have been around for a while, their fathers were in trucking. And whether you didn't start out in trucking, but you ended up back in trucking and you have that background to it. So that's a stepping stone. Mm-hmm. Secondly, You're going to learn business from people who've never had. Fran, I'll just sidebar for a second. Fran, so going to college, yeah, you're going to think that, well, the people teaching you don't run a business, but I'll tell you what university does. Does university versus going to, say, a tech school? Like if you go to a technical school and you're going to become a plumber or becoming an instrumentation technician or an X-ray technologist, you're going to come out of a technical school with a very specific skill set. You go to there for 2 years, you're going to come out and know how to do a job exactly. University, on the other hand, what university does, you don't come out, like, unless you're becoming a dentist, a lawyer, doctor, sure, you're going to, and even an engineer to a degree, you're going to learn some very specific, but going to general business school, is it going to give you some step 1, 2, 3, how to do this? No. But you know what university does? It teaches you how to think.
Right.
You learn how to think because these professors will give you projects whereby you have to write a paper in a perspective that you may not agree with. So you now have to write this paper in an alternate perspective. So if you agree with something or disagree, it's all about learning. And then you do see some of the professors actually do have business experience, but the theory and understanding history, it just gives you, it just changes your mindset. It opens your mindset because if you live in a certain small town, you've always grown up in a small town. When I went to university, I met people that I've never encountered before, that style of people, and say, oh, you can live life like that? Wow. You meet every class. I always met, my number one goal when I went to university is I found someone that can be a study buddy in case I missed a class that I can get notes from, and back and forth we shared. And I had study buddies in every class. But back to the beginning, to the start. What Steve said is right. You need some time. I don't know, in today's world, in 2022, with all the technology, I'm seeing that people can learn industries like trucking a lot faster than years past.
Absolutely.
But I think that here's the first test. Whether you become a broker or you want to be if you're a driver, if you become a company driver, that's okay, Fran, you can disagree, but I'm just saying that, Fran, the thing to look back in is university. If you look at all jobs, if you want to become the director of human resources at a company and you want to become something, not today when you're 21, but if you look at your goal job when you're 40, 45, and you went on Indeed and you looked at those jobs, look at what you need. If you want to become the director of human resources for a company, or like Steve, if you want to become these different roles, you have to work in various environments where there's unions to learn union contracts and how to negotiate that. All these big companies, you have to go through various things. You need to be part of the different associations. Like, so there's a lot more to university is only the stepping one. Your life experience and your pathway to your career identify your future successes. Everything's a stepping stone.
Before you emphasize on that too, is just so and at that same mindset, then why go to grammar school? Why go to high school? Why go to any of them, right? It's the basic common baseline for what you learn. So that basic high school education gives you a baseline on how to process information. Like schools teach you, life educates you. Okay. So going to university normally, which it should be, is a next level of learning and processing information, P&L reports and all this type stuff, graphs and things like that. So then you can take that baseline information. So what it does is it gives you a head start against somebody who's now got to learn that same thing on their own. Right. So all it's giving you is that head start to go out there. And if I'm an employer, I would rather have somebody with a head start of that university, because now I've got a higher baseline where I can now train them to do what I want them to do at my company.
And I was going to say,
go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say to Steve's point, and to Sage's question, what would you tell a 21-year-old coming into the industry? Well, here's the starting point. Whether you want to be that broker or a driver, let's say you want to be a driver and eventually have a trucking company down the road. How you'll know whether you're fit to become that business operator, business owner, is when you start driving and you have problems. When you have a problem, if all you do is you pick up the phone, you call your dispatcher, I got this problem, and that's what you do every time, chances are you're not a business person, because you're not making you're not making changes yourself. If you had a problem, you stop for a moment, you think it through, say, okay, here I am, this is what the situation is. What's the best for the customer, for myself? What's the safest? All these things. You came up with a solution, and then you solved it, and it worked out. You call your dispatch and said, this is what happened. This is what I did. And if they came to you and said, well, okay, you did that, but next time actually we'd prefer you follow this procedure, fine. Because I can tell you my success at Coca-Cola was the following. It's really simple. And I learned it quickly because when I started, the people I started with, I eventually became the supervisor of to some of them. But those guys were great. They were excellent mentors. They taught me what they knew. And that's why, because I absorbed so much. But here's the difference was when I'd go to my sales manager with a problem, say a customer, Pepsi came in there and they stole some space from me or something like that, and I need to secure, whatever the case is. Instead of me just saying, yeah, you know what, I went to the store and Pepsi took over this thing and I just sat there and grumbled. But if I went in there and said, I went into the store today, I see Pepsi's dominated. They've done something to take over, so here's my plan. It's going to cost this much. This is the volume. I ran my numbers. I can, because we had a tool, I can get the numbers, and if I was a salesperson, I'd go to my district manager to get the questions. But the point was, I would formulate a plan, present it, and say, I need this, this, and this to solve this problem. 9 times out of 10, I got what I needed because I didn't come in with a problem and just a nagger. I came in with a solution, and then you get your results, and they supported it, and I'd execute the plan, and I'd win.
There's 2 types of drivers. You know, my dispatcher told me this. My real dispatcher when I was company guy.
Okay.
You got the Chihuahua and the German Shepherd. You got a German Shepherd in your house. He's trained. You know, you got a Chihuahua in the house. Leaf blows by, squirrel goes by, Chihuahua barks, German Shepherd does nothing. You know, somebody sneezes, German Shepherd does nothing. You know, in other words, when the German Shepherd barks, now you're paying attention. Okay, who's at the door, right? There's 2 types of drivers. And this is company and owner, and basically 2 type of people. One creates problems. The other one finds solutions. I know lease operators in the past that wouldn't even change their own light bulb. That they could change themselves, not like a trailer bulb that you can't reach or whatever, but that's how inept. And that's kind of what some of these big carriers want. They want the person that they want to babysit, but you're either a person that creates problems or you create solutions.
I'd like to answer this too, real quick. So she says, if you want to learn trucking, you got to work for mega carriers or Jeffrey Light, people who know what the industry has to prove. So the thing is that you're right. At some aspect, you also want to look at it from the perspective of Jeffrey Light, right? So that university and Jeffrey Light, Jeffrey would probably want someone to at least work for a mega carrier for 1 or 2 years so that they know they're going to stay in the industry. Because if they go right from CDL to let's say, Jeffrey Light, they might not even like the industry and they might not stay. And now it's cost Jeffrey some money because he's had to train, he's had to do drug tests, he's had to do all this. So I'm just using this back to the reference of college. At least now, if I go to hire someone, I know that they've at least had some type of experience in the industry through a university or something like that to be able to that they're going to stay in this industry. And that's kind of what a lot of the times we look at it from what's best for me. But a lot of times when you look at universities or going to a mega carrier for a year, you're actually trying to look at, okay, what am I going to give to the carrier that I want to work for? What can I give to the company that I want to work for? And I've given, let's say 2 years of business degree or so on is more than just somebody that just comes right out of high school.
Sterling, to your question there about that you struggled with school and so forth, but don't underestimate yourself. And the reason I say that is take Steve as an example. I'll just use Steve. But so he's a driver.
I'm an expert.
He's a driver. He's a driver, and now he's a dispatcher, and now he's a safety guy, and it's going great. Jeff enjoys him, really appreciates what he does, and Steve, I think, likes him, and they have a great thing going on. But what if, let's just say, next year Jeff says, I've made enough money, I'm going to retire, and I'm not going to pass the business, I'm just shutting her down. I'm just going to retire, go enjoy life. Now Steve, he gives Steve, it's not like he just shuts the business immediately, but he says, hey guys, everyone, you got 6 months, figure out your plan, but I'm going to retire. I'm going to live the good life and go enjoy my RV and so forth. So now Steve's got to think, well, what am I going to do? Well, think about what Steve's done. He has so many oysters available to him. He set himself up for such success down the road because he can go back to driving. And like I said, because he's got his truck paid off, he could set himself and say, you know what? I could do that. I could probably work for 10 months of the year, 8 months of the year, to 8 to 10 months of the year, and I could take 2 months off a year. I'm not going to work over the December, and I'm going to take off July and August, and I'm going to work the rest of the year, and I'll manage my business. He could take, because he'll have been a safety manager for over 3 to 5 years. I can show, because I know that you can go, if you go look on Sterling, go look on Indeed, look up safety manager trucking jobs in your area. What are they looking for? 3 to 5 years of safety training.
Right.
And if you Sterling, if you looked at look at a dispatcher job, look at a safety manager job on Indeed, so that if something happened where all of a sudden you couldn't be your own driver, okay, whatever happened, maybe, let's say you got injured, you couldn't drive, but you could still be part of an industry. You could be a dispatcher, you could be a safety supervisor, you could be something, you could be a recruiter for a company. Go look at those. I encourage everyone, whatever you're doing, even if you're running your own business, look at your business. And then look on Indeed. Look up the industries like, hey, I could be a safety person. I could be a dispatcher. Look at companies, what the qualifications they have. And you'll see that safety manager, you may only need to add a few more things as you're doing what you're doing to get some more additional information, some safety standard stuff. And all of a sudden, you're a potential candidate for that job. So meaning that don't underestimate, you maybe didn't go to school, but your experience driving, take that experience as the owner operator. If you're running your own MC, or if you're an owner operator, start to learn how to dispatch. That's why if you learn how to use a TMS, you think, well, I'm one truck, what do I need to use it for? You can, if you know how to use a TMS and you've driven a truck for more than 5 years and you have a TMS and you're efficient on your computer, you know how to manage email, you know how to deal with problems, right? You can demonstrate you're a problem solver, and you have computer skills, and you're a driver, you're a dispatcher you could be the dispatcher for that mega carrier that Fran's talking about, right? You start out at the bottom, you leave, and then you can come back in. So don't underestimate the skills you're gaining as an owner operator, as a company driver. Just even if you don't go to school, continue to take small bits and pieces. Take a marketing course where you don't have to take a full thing, or just start studying, right? Polite persistence wears down resistance is something. When I came into freight brokering, even though I went to school and I worked for Coca-Cola for 10 years, when I came in, I studied. I just read books after books about cold calling to refresh myself, right? And I'll show you. Let me show you something.
I have a question after this, but I'm gonna have to start with Steve, because if I start with him, you watch, it'll never end. Watch this next.
Let me add to that. So we have a lot of time that we spend in these trucks, either at docks or driving. Audible is a huge resource. And if you want free audiobooks, there's Hoopla you can download if your library is a part of that. So there's a lot of resources just to learn without a college. But go ahead.
Well, see, this little booklet right here is something I got years ago, and it has everything in here, all about sales, relationship building, mathematical formula, basics, right? It talks about negotiating, right? It gives me a whole thing about negotiating. I took this, I still have it, right? Talking about customers, like it just has so much information. I've kept this book guarded. I've never, I haven't worked there in over 15 years, and I still got it. Why? Because it was so valuable, right? So don't underestimate the skill sets that you need. I came in, I'm now hazmat certified in both Canada and United States for CFR 49. Why? Because my brokerage does not let me dispatch, even though I don't touch the freight. They have the standards that I don't need. I need to be dangerous goods certified to move dangerous freight. If you want to move LTL freight as a broker, as an agent where I'm at, if I want to move an LTL load with YRC freight, I have to pass at 80% an LTL course they have, right? So I have to understand how NMFC and freight classes and densities work. So, so there's all these skill sets. So yeah, if my brokerage shut down and says, Rob, we're shutting down the business, you have to do something else. I could become another broker agent. I could open up my own brokerage. I believe my skill sets would lead me to, I could be a salesperson for any trucking company or freight brokerage at a national level. I could tie it into, because I have dangerous goods knowledge, I have LTL knowledge, I got a lot of skill sets that I can tie in to leverage to something else. So always just keep asking yourself, if you're a driver, great, you've got that skill set. You became an owner operator, now you're a business person, you're learning the business. Learn those numbers that Sandman talked about. Learn how to run that, master the numbers you're doing. Okay, if you feel you're confident with your numbers, you know where you're going, What's the next skill set you could have? Where's your marketing skill set at? Where's your safety standards at? What courses can you take that is not a full-on degree, but keep on learning? And those skill sets will help you for the next level.
Well, first thing, don't you're wrong about listening to Sandman. Don't listen to anything Sandman said. No, just kidding. All right. So first thing I'll start, Steve, because if I know once I ask this, CDN will know exactly why I went to him second. But Steve, do you feel technology is important from the driver aspect, and what technology should drivers learn as fast as they can or as soon as possible as that? And then CDN, you're after him because I know you're going to go for hours on this one, but definitely as a driver, what is technology becoming more and more important every day, and what should they learn?
Yeah, I mean, learn how to do spreadsheets, know your computer. You need to be GPS savvy. You need to be able to manipulate PDFs, sign documents, have an email distribution and organization. Scott SRO Logistics taught me a really simple yet effective email system with the folders that I use today. So for every carrier that I dispatch that's outside of Life Trucking, they have 2 folders, and I utilize them, and so I can use that. Learn how to use a 2-screen computer. I mean, yeah, technology is important because at the end of the day, it's not like it was when my dad was an owner operator in the early 80s. It's all about technology, and so yes, that's important. And then I'm learning how to use Ascend. I'm learning how to use Axis. We use the ELDs my job requires that I look at the ELDs. I can see the cameras. I have to edit stuff for the drivers. I know drivers that can't even manipulate their ELD in their own truck. So, I mean, technology is incredibly important. So
your turn.
I would just add to that, basically what Steve said is all 100% accurate. And I would think that the next thing is communication style. Learning how to communicate to your audience. Just because if you have a certain style, some people prefer email, some prefer text. And the more that you adapt to the people, you'll have better success. And and I think one real benefit, if you take what Steve talked about, learning how to, because nowadays you think, well, how am I going to have 2 screens? Well, you can have 2 screens as a driver, because if you're working out of your truck, you have your phone, right? So you have your phone for stuff, but when you're stopped, you have laptops nowadays. And I can show you, I have a portable screen, 14-inch portable screen that plugs in, and you can get 15-inch. They plug into your laptop, boom, it's portable. It folds up, and I can show it to you that it folds up. It just sits right next to your laptop, plugs in. It won't be compatible for the older laptops, but the newer ones. But as far as the communication goes, meaning if I'm a driver and you're learning your skill sets, because what's the bane of all freight, no matter what, at the end of the day, what's the bane of everything at the end of the day, whether you're a broker or you're a freight is a broker or a carrier or driver. Everyone, the customer at the end of the day, everyone just wants to know, where's my freight, right? That's what they want to know, is where's my freight, where's the driver. So if you're a driver, depending on what cycle you're working, but if you're a driver where, okay, let's say you drove till 10 o'clock at night. Okay, so now you're taking your 10-hour break, because in theory, right, Steve can correct me if I'm wrong, but if your dispatch calls you before your 10 hours is up, theoretically, it's almost, there's a little funny clause in there, but if you pick up your phone from your dispatcher, it's like you're kind of on duty to a degree. There's like this funny ruling. So summary is this: if I'm a driver and I want to enjoy my time off, my 10-hour break off, if it's 10 o'clock, I stopped. Instead of just stopping and not communicating to everyone, I would email or text my dispatcher saying, hey, I've stopped, it's 10 o'clock, I'm at this truck stop or this location, wherever I parked. I'll be getting up at this time. And then in the morning, I realized, hey, I ran out of time, I'm going to need fuel. I saw one tire was low, I need to get some air, or whatever you have to do. So I would just text communicating that I stopped at this time, I'm out of time, I didn't have time to get my fueling. So in the morning, I have to do this, this, and this. I won't be leaving the truck stop until this time. And then I looked ahead, my estimated, if you're delivering that day, I'll be delivering at this time. So just communicate what you did. And then learning, the other thing that's really important, because I get this all the time, when the driver says, well, this person said I should do this. What was their name? Oh, I don't know. We get that often. So make a habit. Always carry a butt pocket pad, right? Because one benefit of being the driver is that if you learn how to master your technology as a driver, because you're being, there it is, Steve, is you're being nimble. You're being, because like, ask Steve, when you're sitting behind the computer with your big computer and the big screens, it's comfortable. The minute you get in the truck, the first time in the truck, it's like, oh, how do I do this again? When you have to do it again, right? So, but when you can become nimble and fast on your, and efficient and good with your dispatch services, your ELDs, your Google Maps, and other software that you use, when you can do it at home, in the truck, all over, that's going to help you down the road. But more importantly is document. Whenever you talk to someone, so even if you're calling the bank, asking a question like, hey, why is this transaction on here or something like that? And they say, well, okay, yeah, this, write down the date and the time of the person you spoke to. You call someone else to make an appointment, you always, whether it's a dentist appointment or you're calling something about a part for your truck and you called the parts department and then you call back and they're like, well, we don't have that. And say, well, I spoke to Mike this morning and he said, oh, Mike, okay, let me put you through. Hey, Mike, I spoke to you this morning. It just, when you write down those names, you have that documentation. So when you get in that mindset and you're just one driver, well, if you ever grew your company, you'll have that ability to constantly write things down. If you ever become a dispatcher for a company, those are all the little skill sets, because you can and I'm sure all of you can say, each of you have had great dispatchers and some not so great dispatchers. And what is the difference? So that's when you're going through, like Sterling, as you're going through the process of an owner operator and you don't like brokers, you got good brokers, bad brokers. That's why the importance of having a TMS system or some kind of notebook system, something to write down where you can say, hey, this broker likes this. Like some brokers prefer email. They don't like calling. Other brokers want you to pick up the phone. So and then you can write down, hey, I don't like this broker because of these reasons, and you build this because, again, you think, well, who cares? I'll remember this. And yeah, you might remember this, but here's the
TMS is Transportation Management System, just so for anybody watching this who hasn't know, but go ahead.
Last thing I was going to say, if you're out there as a broker agent and you think, well, I'm just one person, one broker like Sage, and I don't need a fancy software, I don't need all this stuff. Okay. Or if you're an owner operator or a company, you went out, got your own authority, and you say, I don't need all this stuff. That's fine. You can do that. The only thing I would ask you to do is sit down for a second and say to yourself, when the day comes, if you stay doing what you're doing, like Sage, if he stays doing until he retires, okay, the day he retires, what's his plan? If he just says, I'm going to retire, when I get to the point I'm at the age of retirement, my goal, I'm just going to shut this thing down and
burn it to the ground.
Vanish. And I'm just going to shut it down and enjoy it, be thankful that I had those years and I made me the money I made. And I'm just going to, go and enjoy the rest of my life. Or am I going to try to sell this business? So if your goal is, if you think that you have a business to sell that either someone can take over, well, you better start getting your ducks in a row, because then at least when you're trying to sell it, you can say, well, I got a book of business. Do you have a contract business? If you're working spot market, no, but you got a list of brokers. Here's all the history. Hey, when you go to this shipper, you pull it up. I got all the information, like the receiving times, the procedures for check-in, check-out. You make all that documentation. It seems tedious for one driver, but when you ask Steve, if you actually going through the process of creating a load in the TMS forces you to think step by step for the shipper, what you're doing, entering the shipper details, the hours, all those steps, the consignee details, the customer details, the load details, instead of just writing on there in the TMS general, freight. No, you write down what is actually on the load. And if you don't know what it is, you create it and then you go back in and you revise it, getting in that habit. I'm going to have to get going here, guys.
Huh?
I'm going to have to get going. I think we've been here for a while and I got to get to work.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks for coming in. And I've got one more comment, and then, back to Sage's question, something you would tell a new driver.
Yeah.
Have a goal, a plan, and an end game. So a 1 year could be a goal, 5-year plan, and maybe a 10-year or 20-year end game. And so with that being said, thanks for copping in, guys. I'm going to bounce you. Thanks for copping in.
What?
Thanks to everybody for for coming in and watching. We had almost 60 people in here. That's pretty dang cool. And you guys, strength for today, hope for tomorrow. Peace.